What's going on, viewers? Welcome to LogiCast, the Logical Gamers podcast. I'm Esoteric, and I'm here with Blanka Kong, Gunna Eos, and Huddle Wolf. And today we'll be discussing things pertaining to the gaming industry that we're thankful for. Uh, it can be a minute detail within a system, it could be graphics, it could be, hell, enhancements to one of your favorite platform games. It doesn't matter. So, guys, I'm just going to begin. And one of the things that I am thankful for are wireless controllers. Um, Growing up, I have siblings who love to play around. Funny, two of them are older than me, one of them is younger than me. They all like to play around in unison. And there would be countless times where growing up, because controllers were wired, they would knock down my controller along with the system. Luckily, back then, those systems were very durable, i.e., the Super Nintendo, not so much the very first PlayStation, because there was a time where I had to flip the system over just so discs could be read. Um, so I am really grateful that, technology ended up upgrading and giving us the ability to play games wirelessly. Very appreciative of that. Uh, Something that I'm not so thankful for, hmm, I would have to say with the technology buildup, games costing $75. I mean, um, as the panelists know, I was lucky enough to acquire a PS5, and with having a PS5 comes more expensive games. I'm typically used to spending approximately 65/31 on video games for the previous gen. So now they're going up to about 70 plus dollars. And I feel like there isn't enough explanation or what is the word I'm looking for? Excuses to justify that price raise. Um but it is what it is. Um I still buy the games like an idiot. At least the ones I do select are enjoyable for the PS5 thus far. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my end for now. So I'm going to take it to you, Blanca.
Sure. So there's a lot to be thankful for in modern gaming. I mean, modern times in general. This is a great time to be alive. But in relation to gaming, something I'm very thankful for are emulators and ROMs. Being able to enjoy games of the past that are either unavailable or just way too expensive is great. You know, I don't emulate like new games because I have those systems. I have modern consoles. I don't have a PS5. That's by choice. Um, but yeah, I love emulating older games from my childhood. Right now, we're living in a retro game boom where the prices are astronomically high. Like PS2 games are like ranging from 70 to $300 a disc. You know, these are games I was able to find for like 10, $15 back in the day. So, you know, I refuse to pay the ongoing prices that exist today. So having, you know, ROMs and emulation is a great alternative. So that's something I'm very, very thankful for. Something I'm unthankful for, free to play model games. So while these games on paper sound good, and I understand the hook of a free to play game, I hate what a lot of them become, where they lock a lot of the core features behind a paywall. And I understand that these companies that make these games need to make money, but I feel as though they make way too much money exploiting, you know, human flaws in wanting to progress through a game or wanting to be the best or whatever. You know, gotcha games, you know, sports titles do that a lot. Not that these games are free to play, but they have a free to play system built into them, which at one point was exclusive to mobile gaming, which made sense because these games you would just download and then you would buy gems or coins or whatever to power up or to buy new characters. That kind of made sense to the genre, but it kind of finding its way into mainstream console gaming is really frustrating, and so many people invest so much into these games. And they, and in 10 years they won't be able to replay that game or enjoy the resources that they've paid for.
Yeah.
So a game that would be $60 in the past or $70 today, people end up paying hundreds, sometimes even thousands of dollars to get enjoyment out of, which is crazy to me. So I don't like what free to play has become in 2021. So that's something I'm kind of unthankful for. So that's my two entries. Gunnar Eos, give us one.
Sure. Something I am thankful for in the video game sphere is a genre of video game. Funny enough, it's RPGs or role playing games. For better or for worse, I'm a guy that likes to keep to himself mostly. So I'm not really super big on like multiplayer games and whatnot. I kind of just like to do my own thing when it comes to gaming. RPGs allow me to do that. They allow me to immerse myself in a world. The deeper the lore of an RPG, the more attracted I am to that game. I'm the type of guy that will play Elder Scrolls and read and just sit there and read the books in Elder Scrolls instead of going out and slaying dragons and stuff like that. I'm gonna read. I'm like super into lore. I appreciate.
Nerd.
Yeah. That's
I'm
me.
kidding. I'm
I'm
kidding. I'm
super.
kidding.
I appreciate game developers and teams that put that much depth into their lore because I feel like I can get involved with this world and care about it other than just the video game aspect of slay thing, hit level 99, cast Ultima spell and win. So yeah, RPGs, both Western and Japanese. I'm a fan of both. I like some more than others, but always been big on RPGs. They mean a lot to me in the gaming sphere. And yeah, I love them. Some things that I am not so thankful for are the serialization of video games. What I mean by that is back then when we were younger and we were in our teens, games were games, right? They had a start, they had an ending. The game was just one world, and the people had to tell their story within that one game. Nowadays, are changing, I suppose. A lot of games are left super open ended because we just don't want to make a game, we want to make a franchise. So a lot of these games they end with the idea that a sequel and a trilogy and so on and so on will exist. And to me, that takes away from the game because they just hide a lot of things. They make a lot of things ambiguous. They make a lot of things what ifs because they just want to leave it open ended for a sequel. I kind of miss the days where games were just I boot it up. This is the story. I go through the story. I go through the middle. I go through the end. The game ends. And if there's a sequel down the line, cool. So yeah, that's thankful for RPGs and everything they provide. Not so thankful for open-ended video games because everything's got to have a sequel nowadays. Those are two things that I am thankful and unthankful for. I will pass it off to Staharo Wolf.
Okay, so one thing that I am grateful for in video games is online capability. I'm grateful for it because my friends or the friends that I like to play video games with is scattered all over the place. And with online capability, it's a nice way for us to keep that common ground and to stay connected. I love to play multiplayer games. I love playing video games with my friends. And as
Nerd.
we get old, as we get older, things change, situations change, and it becomes harder to find everyone sitting in a living room on the same couch playing the same game.
Yeah, true that.
So with online capabilities, schedules can be made, meetups can be made, and you can do it within the comfort of your home while still having that multiplayer experience with your pals. One thing that I'm not so grateful for in video games is this rise of making it easier or more accessible for those who don't want to put in work. or for those who don't want to put in effort. For instance, I love my fighting games. They're a part of my soul. So I'm very disappointed that there is such thing called auto combos or easy combos or one button combos that is now being implemented in my fighting games. I didn't grow up on that. So say I'm playing Street Fighter 4, uh, or I don't even think Street Fighter 5 has any auto combos. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't think it does. Um, Playing those games, it was you had to connect your attacks accordingly to your character. You had to know what your character was about. You had to understand what they can and cannot do. Now, with auto combos, especially like, say, as much as I love Dragon Ball Fighters, and I think it's a phenomenal game personally, your auto combos is everything. They're your combo starters. That's how you start your fight. That's how you're going to beat your opponents. And to me, there is a sense of practice in Dragon Ball Fighters, but it's not the practice that you would put it in, say, Marvel versus Capcom 2 for that type of game where it's a 3-on-3, explosive big beams kind of action fighting game. I feel like it's a very disappointing implement to put into video games. Like, for instance, quick time events it falls under the same category because it's like the big button appears on the screen and your character does something flashy. It's like, for me, what are you getting at here? Do you just want me to see the flashy cutscene and they evolve by pressing triangle at the right time?
Yep.
Or like, or like, or is it just easier because now I feel like a badass because my character did something so amazing with the push of one button that appeared?
Also, yep.
Part of it is that, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's both.
Yeah.
But I'd rather just say, okay, well, your character can do this, but you'd have to know how to get the character to do it instead of it just being forced upon me within the gameplay or within the realm of the game. So I don't really like quality of life. I love in video games up until it starts to affect the amount of critical thinking you have to apply. That's what I'm ungrateful for. So I'll move it back to Esoteric.
Things I'm thankful and unthankful for. The next one that I'm going to discuss is kind of a double-edged sword. It is memory cards. I'm grateful for memory cards because they allowed players, to save their data. I remember growing up where they didn't have memory cards for games. I couldn't save my data, and when good old mom is calling and asking you to come here or turn off the game, you had to do what she said, otherwise you'd get your ass beat. So I
Yep.
would end up turning off the game without being able to save my progress, being frustrated because, I got really far in games which were back in the days hard in comparison to today's games. So yeah, I was really frustrated about that. Um, what I am unthankful for about memory cards is the capacity delivery. What I mean by that is systems provide you a certain amount of memory to save your games. And not only that, it incorporates installing the game, which takes approximately 60 to 150 gigs, depending upon the game itself, as well as the save data, which, occupies a minimal amount. Um, it's really annoying because I can't save a lot of games. And in order for you to play multiple games without having to install them, they have to already be installed, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So if there's a new game that I want to buy and it overloads the capacity of the memory that I have, I'd either have to A, upgrade my internal memory, B, purchase an external memory, or C, delete a game that I'm not playing just to pretty much upload this installation of this game. Um, so yeah, it for me it's a double-edged sword. Memory cards are great. However, when they don't hold enough for the games that you want to play, it becomes a very annoying and tedious process. So
So would you say that you are thankful for what memory cards were back then during the PS1 era, for example, as in they let you save your game, but you're unthankful for like what they kind of became in current times where you need this massive hard drive in order to keep your games without having to re-download them?
pretty much, I feel like it was a way of companies kind of making them that much more important, and they kind of like market them because that's one of the main components as to why your system costs so much. Um, so they found a way to kind of like, well, we need to install stuff on this disk for you to play, and that occupies most of the space because honestly, if that wasn't the occurrence, we'd be able to pretty much save a high volume of game data that you've played. So
Mhm.
probably more than what the longevity of the system is. So if it's like maybe 500, 600 games of a lifeline of a system, you probably save like maybe 3, 4 times more given the hard drive space that they give you. However, with these installation disks, you can't really do that. So
True.
I mean, dude, I remember PS2 memory cards, 8 MB of space. What the fuck? How am I
Yeah, it
gonna,
was huge.
so and 8 MB of space today isn't even a save file for a modern game. So,
yeah.
you know, but hey, you were lucky, man. You had memory cards. I didn't have a memory card for the first year of owning a PlayStation, so I would
My
play,
gosh.
I would
Oof.
replay my games from the beginning every single time.
Oh,
For an
I
entire year, and I was limited to when I could play and how long. So I could only play on Saturday and Sunday for 2 hours. That was it. So
oh
leaving the
I
game
definitely know that
on,
feeling.
any of that, like that was off the table, 100%. Which is why
I absolutely
that's why there's so many games I haven't beaten, or so many games I haven't even gotten to try because it's like, well, I played Crash Bandicoot the first 20 levels like for an entire year. So that was my reality. But anyway, you were gonna say something before I go?
no, I was gonna say I absolutely know that feeling. Because luckily enough, I was able to get a Sega Saturn, and I didn't have a memory card for that. The Dreamcast, no memory card, and I really wanted those memory cards because they were like gigapets back in the day. They were very
Yeah.
interactive. So, um, one of the games that I was playing on the Dreamcast, Mega Man X4, I couldn't really play it and get as far as I wanted to Mega because Mega Man is a very difficult game for, even now they can be very challenging. Um Playing the Mega Man X game, which is way more like fast paced and whatnot compared to the original Mega Man games, it was really difficult to get to certain places if you didn't know like how to deal with certain bosses or whatever in certain areas. I'm digressing a bit, but yeah, I dealt with that issue as well.
Cool. Well, moving on. You did take one of my points, so I'll skip over that one. Wireless controllers was one of my thankful for topics, but you kind of covered that. So, one thing I'm thankful for is industry competition. So, I'm very grateful that the big three exist, right? Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. And I'm very grateful that they're very competitive with each other. Even though some people will say, well, Nintendo doesn't compete with anybody, they kind of do their own thing. And to some degree, you're correct, but you can't convince me that they're not paying attention to what the other guys are doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course
So,
they are.
of course
Yeah.
they are, right? Like, how can
Yeah.
they not?
Mhm.
So, and I think that probably inadvertently plays a factor in the quality of games that are put out. So if you look at the PS3 era of games, there was a long stretch of time where there wasn't a lot of strong first party games. And
Yeah.
because Microsoft had a stronghold on the online market and the FPS market, which was huge at the time, still is, but at that time it was like fresh.
Yeah.
And Nintendo had a lock on the motion control market or whatever. Sony had to step it up, and if you look at the PS4 era and the catalog of first-party games on the PS4 compared to the PS3, is a huge discrepancy. Like those games, they really stepped it up, right? And we're seeing something similar happen now with Xbox, right? Where Microsoft came into the Xbox One, PS4 generation with a lot of bravado, and they fucking lost horribly. And if you look at their catalog of first-party titles, ain't a lot there, right? And so now they're investing into studios and they're looking into making exclusive titles for their Xbox. So it's pretty cool that that exists, because we're getting good games out of it, right? Not all good games, but we get a few gems here and there, right? Spider-Man, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, games like that, which are fantastic. So and that may not exist if there was no competition. If it was just Xbox, for example, right? Then they might be less inclined to developing high quality games. So that's something I'm grateful for. I think competition is very healthy and it's best for the consumer. Consumer comes out winning. Something I'm not so grateful for, and this is kind of similar to what I said before, but loot box mechanics. I don't like loot box mechanics. Fuck that bullshit. I don't like surprises. The older I've gotten, the less I enjoy surprises. Don't surprise me. Even a good surprise, I'm like, just fucking tell me. Like, I don't stop playing these games. So loot boxes, I'm not a fan of at all. It it speaks to. I think it's a very exploitive feature that taps into like the darker parts of like human nature, right? Like curiosity and like
Big
taking
time, yeah.
unnecessary risk and all that, and like putting it all on the line just to see what you get, right? So some people do that. Some people they spend way too much money on loot boxes and various games, and they end up not paying their fucking rent or not paying their mortgage or not paying their phone bill or not paying their credit card bill, and it makes people more irresponsible. What are you gonna say?
No, or just eating.
Or yeah, food.
People
They
give up
stop
meals.
eating.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's crazy to me. Like, what's wrong with you, right? And these guys just go to the bank laughing, counting all their profits, shattering records, because of loot boxes.
Oh yeah.
Which is disgusting, right? So I'm very ungrateful for that being a thing and it being so effective. So hopefully something changes. I think we need to do something. Us as like a community or a consumer base, we need to take a stand. And so having these conversations and hopefully people listening in and realizing that they're being taken advantage of will contribute to that change that I'm talking about. So that's my entry. Gunnar, what do you got for us?
Okay. So thing that I am grateful for in the video game sphere are indie developers or independent game developers. I think certain games by the big ones, your Capcoms, your Square Enixes, your EAs, your Ubisofts, yada yada. Some of those games have gotten too big, too bloated, and Esoteric brought it up. These games are getting pricey. 65, they're making $70 the new standard, and sometimes these games, in my opinion, they aren't worth it. They aren't worth the 60, they aren't worth the 50. So I'm thankful that indie developers exist because there are a lot of really solid indie titles out there of every genre, RPGs, action adventure games, platformers, you name it, there's probably an indie game out there that has done it. And also, not so much that the extra bloat of modern games, there are a lot of game archetypes that no longer exist. So just a quick example, I'm a big fan of Advanced Wars. That's predominantly a Nintendo franchise. Now, for a long time, this is kind of changing now, but for a long time, there was no Advanced Wars games. I think the last one that came out was Days of Ruin on the DS, not even the 3DS, the DS. So I haven't seen Advanced Wars for a while, but when the Switch started rolling out on its, when it came out, there were games like Wargroove and Tiny Metal those were Advanced Wars like games. They filled
Mhm.
that Advanced Wars niche. So,
Mhm.
and they were cheap. They were like $20. So I was like, oh my God, an Advanced Wars like game that's $20? Yeah, here you go. And it's on my Switch. I can play it portably and I get my Advanced Wars. So I would have never gotten that without the indie scene. And there's a lot of games of different franchises and game not franchises, but game types that I don't see the big guys doing anymore, but I'll get it from an indie developer. So really thankful for indies. Keep on doing what you're doing. These guys tend to really put a lot of love and craft in their games.
Yeah,
You don't
big
really
time.
see that a lot from like the big guys anymore. So keep on that. Something I am unthankful for: video game console fanboyism. I am over that as a whole. And
Mhm.
unfortunately that still exists. I remember, fucking people were repping their Nintendos, people were repping Sega, like, and these people would get into legitimate fist fights over these things for a box with electronics in it. I'm gonna fight you because you said Nintendo sucks. Now it's just like with these systems the way they are, they're so very similar. There's not a lot of difference between them. As far as I'm concerned, with the exception of the Nintendo Switch, the Xbox Series X, and the PS5, they're just low spec PCs at this point. It's like what box do you want? Do you want the white box or do you want the weird looking gray one that looks like a fridge? Like they play the same things. The only thing that separates them are exclusives, which you can make an argument against those. But at this point, I'm not repping Sony. I'm not repping Microsoft. I'm not even repping Nintendo. If you got a game, you got a franchise that I like, I'm getting your system. Where are my friends are? My friends are on predominantly PlayStation. That's where I am. That's where I'm at. So I hate fanboyism. I hate these repping these consoles. These guys aren't paying you. You don't really need to go that hard for them. So yeah, indie games cool. Fanboyism lame. Those are my likes. What I'm thankful and disthankful for. I'll pass it over to Wolf.
Okay. So one thing another thing that I'm grateful for in video games is I'm gonna say, because I grew up on the franchise, it's like a genre, much like how Gunna EO started it. It would be action adventure genre. I love that genre of video games. Usually they come with a sense of exploration, and that's really because I grew up on the Legend of Zelda franchise,
Yeah.
um, which I can always enjoy. Uh, I've always have enjoyed and will continue to enjoy. I think I have high expectations for Breath of the Wild too. Um, so I'm grateful that that's a genre that people can pick up, they can play, they can they can kind of diverge from the path given usually in action adventures, assuming it's not one of those linear ones. But I think it's a nice segue into video games overall for anybody, because they're typically easy to play, typically easy to get into as a genre. What I'm not grateful for in video games is, much like Blanka Kong said earlier, is the monetization that happens in video games nowadays. Whether it's what they call pay to win, that's a sense of that's a level of toxicity that tends to happen where people will just blow their life savings on the video game because they just feel the need to have this character or weapon or the ability to win, um without, again, I'm all about putting in effort without putting in the effort. Like, I read a post that Marvel the Marvel game is now going to introduce people paying for EXP.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's a very toxic way to go about the video game. It's not healthy. It really isn't. It creates irresponsible choices or decision making on the gamer's part. I understand that. Again, I do believe that these creators and developers and programmers, they all need to get paid. They all need to eat. It is their job. I get that part. But when it comes down to monetization in video games, I feel like it should be things that don't directly affect the game as a game. You know, whether it's alternate costumes for your character or really anything little and subtle changes. But when it comes down to things like, oh man, EXP, EXP is very important in any video game. If it's a part of the game, that means that that's what you're going to be spending a large portion of your time doing. And a guy who says, okay, well, he's going to justify it as I don't have time anymore to be playing this video game. I'm going to spend $40 on EXP to boost my character. Why is he even playing the video game to begin with? He should be playing something a little more accessible and respective to his time. That's how I feel it should be done. But monetization to me is just a very, I'm not going to say scummy, but it's a very,
I would.
It's too excessive.
it's a way of getting people to break into a habit of making choices that they shouldn't be making. It's a way of breaking. How many articles have I read of a child who, or how many customers I've dealt with in my profession of a customers whose children stole their credit card or stole their debit card to buy Fortnite add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like every second there's a dispute that I have to put in because of this. And at the same time, the parent ends up losing because you'd have to report your child. And no one wants to do that. You don't want to report your child to the police.
Right.
It's super
Right.
excessive and it breeds entitlement.
Right. It does breed a sense of entitlement as well. So I just feel like added monetization in video games is no good. No good. It's a no.
I can agree with that.
Back to you, Esoteric.
Okay. One of the things that I'm thankful for is region freedom. There's been games that, are not developed in the US that I actually enjoy playing. And back in the days, it was damn near impossible to acquire those games without, you know, uh, not paying for it, so to speak. You can purchase them overseas, they can be sent out to you. However, because your system wasn't Japanese or whichever region the game was from, you couldn't play it. So now in these days, they started to incorporate systems that allow you to play region-free games. So if I wanted to go to Play Asia, purchase a game that's only in Japan, pop it into the PS5, 4, whatever, I can do so. Same thing with the Switch. I believe also you can create accounts in order to acquire those games virtually. So
Yes.
that's a plus. Um, Definitely groundbreaking because there's a lot of games that don't get notoriety in the US that are really great in the regions that they're created, and I would love to experience them, you know.
Super Robot
Um,
Wars.
yeah,
Just
Yeah.
Super Robot Wars, I believe Custom Robo. Um,
mm.
it's a whole bunch of them that are out there.
Arguably, there's a lot less of that nowadays. At least I feel there is. A lot like a lot of like games are open. Like there aren't so many games that are specific regions
Hmm.
tied to specific regions unless they're like heavily culturally based games. Because like a game about like a Japanese holiday wouldn't really work so well in North America. But
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Back then it was a lot of franchises we never sequels and games that we never saw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially considering the fact that due to certain like laws, we missed out on certain pivotal moments within certain games. You know, I hear a lot of things about Pokemon having certain things that they don't want the US to kind of, you know, deal with or encounter in their game. So they kind of change the dialogue or certain lore within the series. So it would have been nice to be able to, well, I mean, I was a freaking kid and I'm sure my parents wasn't going to purchase it overseas for me, but being an adult within that time, it would have been great to be able to like, hey, let me get this game. But unfortunately, even if I got the game, I couldn't play it on the Game Boy that I had because it was US based. Um, so that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy region free. Um, what I dislike about gaming today is bad sportsmanship. Um, yes, it's great that, you know, with technology, they were able to build the internet, allowing us to play in the comfort of our own home. But there are times where even then, our friends are not accessible. So, um, especially when you're playing competitive games. So when you want to test your metal against your friends, they're not available for XYZ reasons. The next best thing to do, because you already kicked the computer's ass several times on the hardest difficulty, is to play against other people. Um, Unfortunately, you don't get that experience based off of this current climate because people are entitled, and they also are very cheap. They don't take accountability when it comes to losing.
Mm.
So there are
Mhm.
times where you'll be, you know, stronger than the other player. However, because the player is upset, they would do what is known as land switching or basically disconnecting. And it's like, it's very, it is very unsportsmanlike. And it kind of takes away from the fun of the competitive game that you're playing, whether it's racing, sports, fighting games, etc. Um, so yeah, that's something that I really am unthankful for, and hopefully that can change. Highly doubt it. Not gonna hold my breath, but it would be nice. And back to you, Kong.
Cool. So this will be my last one, because you guys took some of mine. And I'm like, fuck. So, which is fine. That's fine. So first thing I'm thankful for is YouTube and streaming as it relates to gaming. So being able to not just stream my own gameplay and record my own gameplay and share it with the world, but being able to experience other people's experience with those games. There are plenty of games that I have zero intention of playing for whatever reason. But if I wanted to educate myself on the game, or if I wanted to see what this game was about, I can do a quick YouTube search and I could find multiple gameplay uh, videos of said game, right? With commentary, without commentary, speed runs. Like, there's so many different ways I can consume the game from a viewer standpoint because YouTube and Twitch or just streaming in general exists, and that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
If I was as a kid, if I was able to watch my friends play, their game from the comfort of my own room and be able to like chat with them and to go, hey, go here, or give them advice or whatever, like that would have been so sick to grow up with that. But obviously I didn't. Um, but also to be able to like record gameplay or share gameplay or watch other people's gameplay, and see other people's passionate response to what's going on in the game kind of gives me like a better understanding as to why certain games are popular, or um why certain games are cult classics or whatever. So that's pretty cool. There's a bunch of games that I discovered because of YouTube, right? I would just see somebody that I follow playing this weird game. I'm like, what is this? What is Bonk's Adventure, right? And that's how I figured. That's how I learned about Bonk's Adventure. It was a weird platformer that I didn't know exists, and it's awesome. It's a great fucking game, and I hope to play it and finish it someday. But I know it exists, and I know it's a great game. But I would have never known about it had it not been for YouTube. So, so that's something I'm very grateful for. The other thing, which is a good yin to this yang is, or a good opposite would be mainstream attention. So that's something I'm not super grateful for. Gaming becoming mainstream and getting mainstream attention in terms of like being talked about on the news and it being just more available to people, I think is good for the business side of gaming, but I think it's also diluted the quality and the integrity of the kind of games that we do get today. So games being a more mainstream hobby, it's great, you know, for those working in that industry, and it's great to have communities expand. But the double-edged sword to that is people trying to change what those games are, right? People asking for easy mode in games that don't feature that, or people
Hence
trying to.
the.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you. I just wanted to ask
Okay,
if this would be your
that's my
th-
ungrateful.
yeah, I know. I'm saying like this would be like in correlation to say the Dark Souls series or the Soul type games in general, where like say Dark Souls, or is it Dark Souls was the first iteration,
Demon Souls,
being
technically.
Demon Souls. There we go. Demon
Yeah.
Souls being um difficulty at its peak, whereas games like say Sekiro or Neo being easier than Demon Souls was or would be, because now the demographic has increased, or not the demographic, the group of people who wants to play have increased, but now it's also increased the opinions of how these games should be developed by the population.
Ah, I
So I
see what I
think
see.
Yeah.
that's. I mean, I see what you're saying, but like, I don't think Sekiro is easier than Demon Souls. I think it's just different, but it's also
I,
difficult.
I think he wasn't. I don't think he was trying to like compare the two like definitively. I think he was just trying to make an example. Um,
Like Sekiro would have more quality of life implements than say Dark Souls would have, or Demon Souls would have, in as everything started with Demon Souls.
Well,
so
if you're
So
talking
as
about
these
gameplay
games,
smoothness and less jankiness, then sure. But and then that's more so to the technology of the time. I'm
I'm saying
talking
more.
more.
well,
Mhm.
Go
well,
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
hope I'm
Go
not
ahead.
speaking for you, Wolf. I think what he's trying to say is that now that the
I'm trying to
masses
understand.
are incorporated within the whole gaming realm, because there's the ones that are requesting the components that we disagree with, it kind of dilutes the morality of the companies or the developers that's creating it. So it's like if the masses wants this, they're going to be more inclined to, because they're going to buy. The incentive is to get their money. So it kind of dilutes the quality, as you said, the morality and the integrity. I think that's what Wolf was trying to convey.
So
Um,
you see like how I generalized fighting games as a whole, and even though Dragon Ball Z is very different from Street Fighter, Dragon Ball Z core is the core quality of life for Dragon Ball Z is the auto combos, whereas say Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5 does not have that. So if you played fighting games, or if you're being introduced into fighting games, you would have to put in more effort playing Street Fighter 4 and 5 than you would have
Sure.
to than you right. So that's what I'm saying, is that when you say when these um when these games become popular, because Sekiro, Neo, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, they're all similar games to each other.
Sure.
They're even though they're different, probably different companies making them, they all come from a core build. So with Demon Souls being, or Demon Souls transitioning to Dark Souls being more popular, becoming more popular, another game company comes in and says, "Hey, we want to make that type of game, but we want to make it more accessible for the growing numbers that is starting to to become magnetized to those
okay,
types of games."
I see what you're saying.
So then Sekiro comes out, say Sekiro comes out, and they'll say, okay, well, Demon Souls didn't have a way where you can gain a power up. So, for example, a power up to increase your movement for a certain amount of time, which is a quality of life change to that type of video game overall. So, that's what's happening with the Dark Soul type games now. Their increased popularity is causing these types of games to become more diluted, more accessible, more playable to gamers like me who don't want to put in the effort to play Demon Souls.
No. I think your examples are not accurate. So, Demon Souls to Sekiro still hold a certain level of difficulty, and it varies from game to game just because of new gameplay features or whatever. But a better example would be any Demon Souls game or Neo, which is a different game, compared to something like Lords of the Fallen or something like the modern God of War games, where they're both kind of action adventure, but God of War features an easy mode. So you can literally play the game on baby mode to where you can take 1,000 hits. Whereas in any Souls game or Sekiro or Neo, that option doesn't exist. This game is what it is. It is at this difficulty. It is up to you to get good enough and to strategize enough to overcome the game. There is no scale of difficulty, at least in that sense of hard, medium, easy. That doesn't exist in Dark Souls as it does in God of War, Spider-Man, Uncharted, any other modern action adventure game. Like, you're comparing a tomato to a tomato as opposed to a tomato to a potato.
So you're saying that Neo, Sekiro, and all the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, they're all the same. They're all just as difficult as each other. They're all just
That's not
as
what I
hard
said.
to assess.
I said they maintain a certain level of difficulty while it varies from game to game with new features. There isn't a huge discrepancy in difficulty between any of them, in my opinion. And I've played most of them, not all of them, but most of them. If we're comparing Uncharted to, Bloodborne, right? These are two different games, but they're both action adventure, right? One is clearly harder than the other, and one has the option, a catalog of difficulties to choose from, right? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at. You're comparing two of the same game to each other, which isn't what I'm saying at all. But I'm trying to figure out what you're getting at. I don't know. Am I misunderstanding? Is it like what's happening here? Like, is my point not clear?
It's not that. It's just my way of thinking. That's all it is. Because again, I can break down. So you have, again, let's just continue to use fighting games for me. You have your 3D fighting games, you have your 2D fighting games, and then you have your anime fighting games.
Okay.
They're all fighting games.
Sure.
But they each one of them brings something different to the table. So when you're gonna compare, say, an anime fighting game, you would compare like Blaze Blue to Dragon Ball Z, right? Okay. So with that said, Dragon Ball Z and Blaze Blue, they're both anime fighting games because they follow certain criteria, but Dragon Ball Z is easier to play.
Right.
Because Dragon Ball Z has the auto combos or not as tight combinations as, say, Blaze Blue would have. But Blaze Blue, but they're still the same anime, as you would title it, anime. It
falls under the same genre. Yeah.
Right. Well, the genre is fighting, but the sub correlation between them is the fact that they are hand drawing typically, or they have excessive combos, crazy movements all over the screen. That's typically what you would apply to anime fighting games.
Right.
Then you have your 2D.
No. Finish your example.
Then you have your 3D fighting games, which is, they're from the same company, but Tekken and Soul Calibur, or Tekken and Dead or Alive. Let's use that, right? Tekken and Dead or Alive are your 3D fighting games. So let's compare Tekken and Dead or Alive now. You wouldn't still correlate. You wouldn't have the same kind of connection with Tekken that you would have with Dragon Ball Z. Because they're fighting games, but they operate very differently.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is with the Dark Souls, because Demon Souls started it all. Then Dark Souls came, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3. That popularized that type of build of game where everything you do burns up 90% of your stamina, your armor affects how your character moves, the enemies are extremely difficult, you probably have to die a couple times to learn the game. There's no way around that. So then you have Bloodborne that's a part of that now. So this company went ahead and said, oh, I like how Demon Souls is running. I like how it's building that popularity. Let's build a Demon Souls-like game and call it Bloodborne.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is, what is the quality of life differences between Bloodborne and Demon Souls, if there is any at all? Or they are just or are they just mirror imitations of each other?
So that's a very difficult question to answer. It's one I can answer, but it's one that'll eat up the entire podcast. Like, it's a podcast in itself. So what I'll say is, because I think there's a small disconnect, so I just need to make some parallels here to what you're saying and what I'm saying. So, and I will end my point with that and move on because we're running out of time quickly. So, your Blaze Blue, in your example, is Demon Souls. Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, it's all of those, right? Just like Blaze Blue has like fucking 20 iterations of the same game, right? There's Blaze Blue Phantasm, whatever, and Blaze Blue this and Blaze Blue that, right? They're all still Blaze Blue games, right? And they all still have they change as they come out, right? New characters, new features, new whatever, but the core is generally the same. The core design, right? We'll say that because quality of life is going to vary from game to game, and how it's absorbed by the audience is going to vary, right? We don't really know until the game comes out. So the core design is the same, right? There's no auto combos in Blaze Blue, period, right? Just like there's no easy mode
Right.
in Souls games, period. You play the game for what it is, right? So your Blaze Blue in your example is the Souls games across the board for the most part, excluding games like Lords of the Fallen, who are just sad imitations. And then your example of like Dragon Ball Z, which is a great fighting game in its own right, but it has a more accepting, welcoming accessibility to their players, or barrier to entry. That's perfect, right? Is something like Spider-Man or Uncharted, right? You can be a casual gamer and you want to enjoy this game, but you don't want to sweat too hard. You can just play on easy mode, and you can get through the game pretty easily, right? Whereas somebody like me, or somebody like most of us here, we don't have to play on easy. We can play on hard and get through the game, right? Whether we do that or not is up to us. But what I'm saying is that feature doesn't exist in certain games. Certain games being Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 through 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. There is no easy mode. There is no, okay, we're going to take over for you, kid. You're having a hard time. No, you get through it or you don't get through it. That's it. And so taking it all the way back to what I was saying in the beginning is mainstream media and mainstream attention is what's pushing a lot of developers to kind of forcing that on different games. Now, to your point, I don't think Miyazaki and From Software is influenced by social media and all that, and their arm wasn't twisted in order to put easy mode in their games. We'll see when Elden Ring comes out in January if I'm wrong. But as far as today is concerned, that's never happened. They've never bent the knee to the casual gamer in the sense of, okay, we'll feature an easy mode because people are complaining. That's never happened. So your example to me was confusing because to use your examples, you were comparing a Blaze Blue game to a Blaze Blue game, which is like, what are you asking me here, right? Like these two things are almost the same. Does that make sense?
Right, but Blaze Blue is harder to play than Blaze Blue Continuum.
Okay, but now
And
you're
that's
digging.
what I
Okay,
was
but now
saying.
you're digging
Right.
deeper as to
Now, right, I was
which one
going
amongst these
to
games is
right.
harder. That's not what I'm talking about at all.
I was going in that direction
Yeah, you're digging
because
way
that's
deeper
right
than
because
the
that's what I
base topic.
figured that was happening with that area of video games or that title
You
of
can
video
argue that.
games,
You can argue that. You can
right? But
argue that
that's what I
Bloodborne is
figured.
easier to
That's what
play
was
than Demon
happening.
Souls because Demon Souls came out in 2009. So
Mm.
the technology wasn't the same.
There's several variables to it.
Yeah.
It could be
So
the mechanics improving. It could be maybe a minor influence to the design approach. Like Dark Souls 3 is easier to roll and evade than it is for Dark Souls
sure, and
1
that's
or
that's a
things
deeper
like that.
nuance. That's like if
Yeah, yeah,
that's really digging into like
yeah.
and that's fine. We could have a discussion like that. I'd be more than happy to, but that's not what I was getting at all.
You was
I was
alluding to just like
it was a very
a general a general
genre.
aspect
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
okay.
So cool. I'm gonna pass it to Gunner and let you guys wrap up, and this will be the final round.
Yeah, sure, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I would a Dark Souls episode. That'd be cool. I'll be down for that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
pass.
well, I
I'm
mean,
not
you
in,
had a
I'm
lot.
not in,
You got
I'm
a
not
lot to say.
interested enough, but
You got a
I
lot to
just
say.
wanted to know if that's what's happening. Like Demon Souls came out, it was hard. Dark Souls came out, it was hard. Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, but it still increased popularity. So
Yeah.
with popularity, new opinions come in. With new opinions coming in, if I'm going to create a Dark Souls games and those opinions are saying, well, I want to play this, but it's too hard. Creating Bloodborne would be the logical sense would be we'll make it at a certain difficulty, but not as hard as Dark Souls.
What I'll say is those opinions started to manifest when Sekiro came out. That's when
That's what
those
I'm
opinions really
asking.
started to bubble up.
Right.
I
And
mean, you
that was
didn't
because
ask
it
it
was an
directly,
Activision.
but
That was because it
that
was an Activision game.
well, it was an
So
Activision published game,
Published. They only
that's what
but
I
it
mean.
was developed by from. Well, you got to make that distinction because somebody in the comments will fucking correct the shit out of you
Oh well.
relentlessly. I mean,
Activision
I'm just
fronted
saying.
they just fronted the
I'm
cash.
just
That's it.
saying. But
I get it.
yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Gunner. Go ahead, Gunner.
Yeah. Okay. So,
My lights are
thank
turning off back there.
thankfulness. What I was gonna mention, well, that turned into a whole thing. I was gonna mention,
Mhm.
um, video games and the gaming media, um, gaining popularity. Yeah. So
Just as a heads up. Go ahead.
yeah. So I'm gonna change it. Portable gaming and when I say portable gaming, I mean the PSP, Vita, DS, 3DS era of portable gaming. I think there was something special about that. It wasn't like a cell phone. This was like a portable gaming console that was dedicated to gaming. Some of my best memories that I'll probably carry with me to the end of my days are the times that we spent in school and in McDonald's to the wee hours of the morning, sometimes playing Monster Hunter specifically. Um, you could really only have achieved that with those portable consoles.
Yeah.
That's a special time. I don't think, even though the Switch and stuff is portable, I don't think anything will trump that specific era in time where portable consoles were their own thing. Like now it's more like a cell phone focused, and I'm not really with that. So I'm thankful for that generation of gaming and all the fond memories that it brought me. Um, Something that I am less thankful for in the realm of portability is the normalization of cell phone gaming. I know cell phones nowadays are different than they were in the past. Some of these can play full-fledged games. I'm just not with it. I'm sorry. I don't really consider cell phones a video game platform. I consider things that you play on them to be time wasters. The
Amen.
running games, the jumping games. It's something like you're waiting for the train, bus, taxi. You're like, I just want to do something with my time. That's it. But coming a little bit more mainstream. You got some Mario games that are on cell phones now. So I'm not a big fan of that, but I recognize some people like it, and that's cool with them. I'll always have a fondness for my DS, PSP, Vita, 3DS days. That's about it. That's about it. My last little bit of thankful for and not so thankful for. I'll leave it to Wolf to finish his thanks and dislikes.
I don't have anything.
You heard the man.
You ran out? Okay. Esoteric.
Oh, I have one more. Okay.
If you have it. If you don't, then we'll end.
Well, I don't know if I have a what I'm unthankful for, but I do have a thankful for.
Okay.
Back in the days, I was thankful for free demos. It was a very exciting time in my childhood. I was so eager. That was the only time I was eager to pick up the mail because that was the only thing that was pretty much in my name back in the days. You know, like aside from bills or important letters or whatever, which I didn't have to worry about. What I really wanted was magazines that would come with games and a book reading games and things like that. And I always appreciated that because maybe it's just me, growing up with that particular time, but I always loved like the little meticulous details of certain things that that gaming companies presented it to us, i.e. Having booklets, when you purchase a game. I used to be really excited about that. Used to open up the game while I was on the train, pull out the book, read what's going on before I got home. But they kind of that type of feeling kind of dwindled because games these days don't even have books. Um, so yeah, same thing with the demos. Now you have to download them online and actually go searching for them. For that stage in life, I was happy about that particular type of loot box, so to speak, because you didn't know what games you had, coming to you. Um,
Well, that loot box was free, right?
it was, yeah, exactly. But it's taking the excluding the negatives of like finances. The one of the positives were as a kid acquiring that disc was I wonder what games I'm gonna get. So um and not having money and playing the shit out of them from time to time again.
You liked it
Um
enough, you add it to your Christmas list and hope your parents get it for you.
Yep.
that
That
was
was the
the
strat.
real that was the real loot box.
Yeah, might get lucky, you might get a pair of socks.
That's our Christmases now. Be lucky to get that even.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but as for I'm thankful. Can't think of anything right now. So yeah.
Alrighty, well, that was our Thanksgiving episode. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody watching. And if you're watching this and it's not Thanksgiving, then happy
Happy
Thanksgiving next year or whatever. I don't know. Happy whatever's going on.
happy day of the
So
week.
happy day of the week. So yeah. Esoteric streams on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time to 1 a.m. So check him out. By the time this comes out, I don't know what he'd be streaming, but I'm sure it's something interesting. So definitely check it out. If you miss any of our old streams, they're all re-uploaded to this very same YouTube channel. So you feel free to check out whatever seems interesting to you. I also stream on Twitch. No specified schedule. Blanka Kong on Twitch. We do podcasts every week, or at least we publish them every week on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely check that out. Subscribe and hit the notification bell in order to be notified when those go live. And like the video if you enjoyed it, dislike if you disliked it. Comment down below about some of the things you're thankful for or ungrateful for, right? And let us know what you think. So, Esoteric, where can they find us on the socials?
Right, guys, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Logical Gameless TV. Just look for the light bulb icon. And yeah, we'd love for you guys to chime in. Let us know what you think.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Appreciate it.
Right. Peace,
Take it
guys.
easy.
All right.
All right.